My paper is grandly called A Reform Agenda for UK Construction, Education and Practice. I come at this not so much from a professional point of view, although that's clearly important, but more from studying the construction workers, on-site construction workers. So my focus is on vocational education and training, but actually I think it's relevant across the board. And this first slide really is to remind ourselves that we're not in a good starting place. So in the UK construction context at the moment, there's plenty of literature in the construction management world around these issues, but responsibility for learning is passed down to the individual. And I like this quote from Andrew Dainty: the individual who is least likely to have information, resources, or the inclination to embark on a lengthy training program. And what we have is a kind of race to the bottom, degenerative competition, as Baling and Harvey term it. And one of the things that they highlight about this is it tends to give us a context which has all of these characteristics. So there's not so much tax income to the state because of the race to the bottom. There's a general tendency to fail to invest in skills, which echoes what Dainty was saying, endemic poor productivity, and a culture which is antithetical to innovation. So it's not a brilliant starting point, is the first thing I want to say. And I've come at this from a variety of perspectives over time, and I've got more interested in the general construction management literature, and also more interested in educational theory. And the rest of this talk is really rooted in what educational theory can teach us about zero carbon. And here, there's three concepts which have their origins in France. So we have savoir, which is technical generalized principles, knowledge. We have savoir-faire, knowing how to do things, which is about the practical manipulation of tools and materials, what we often call skill. And thirdly, and importantly, there's this thing savoir-être, know how to be. And this speaks much more to ideas about personal integrity, behaving in ways which treat others fairly, taking responsibility for one's actions, and behaving in a manner which is socially acceptable, if we think of construction as a social activity. All of these things have education implications. They also have practice implications in terms of the way that contracts are organized, for example, partnership working, that sort of thing. But the key thing is that I've got this concept of competence, and it's a classic three-legged stool. But the stool will stand up if it has all three legs in place. But if we don't have one of the legs of the stool, then the stool falls over. So competence can be understood as knowledge, character, and skill, which is those three kinds of savoir. Okay, so that gives us a bit of a framework. Let's explore in a bit more detail. There are different kinds of orders of learning associated with each of those different kinds of knowledge and skill and character. And there's this idea of a hierarchy in which the lower orders at the bottom, number one, and then moving up the hierarchy, each higher level assumes the previous level. So 2 includes 1 and 3 includes 2 and so on. And what you have is a set of, these are well researched in various bits of literature, see the paper for details. But for people to be able to create new technical design requires these quite high levels of technical knowledge based on principles. For practical skill to be able to manipulate tools and work on improving one's own work requires quite high level of skill. And in terms of character, we're not just talking about the consequential effects of I will get a penalty if I don't behave well, but these more sort of appealing to universal ethics type side of things. Those are the orders of learning, and you can apply them in each of these different three components of what I'm calling competence. But there's also this concept of domain of learning, which is, if you like, the breadth of learning. And again, in the UK context, this tends to be very narrow. So you may have the task of a single action on a building project, and I've given the example of a plumbing in a sink. Above the task and a bit broader, you have the project. So my example is fitting a bathroom, where you've got multiple tasks being achieved. The job is actually related to one's employment, so the completion of multiple projects to satisfy the employer, including if you're self-employed. But then even beyond that, we can think about domains of learning relating to a whole occupation. What does it mean to be a plumber or an architect? What does
Gavin,
it mean
to wrap up fairly swiftly, I'm afraid.
What does it mean to be a member of the industry? Those three things can be put together, and it gives us a composite evaluation framework. We need to think about the three legs of competence. We need to think about the order of learning, how high a level of learning is achieved, but also the breadth of learning according to the domain. And I would argue that we have quite a few problems in quite a few of those areas in relation to zero carbon. Thank you very much.